This is where we left off from the last tutorial. But I can see the lines are a little bit thick. Um, they are a little bit thick. So we can still either keep like this, or we can just quickly go back and re-edit that so the lines aren't too thick, but we can still get the line to be a little bit prominent. So I'll just keep that layer checked so we can have a comparison. I'll quickly create a new layer, and I'll just name that line 2, just so we can kind of compare the two. Alright, we'll go back onto our base image. We want to zoom in, which is Control or Command plus button. Once you've done that, you want to click on W, which is your 1 tool. If it's taking you to the quick selection, just click on the icon, right click on it, and just make sure this dot is selected over the magic 1 tool. I'll click on the black section again, go at the top, say select. We'll select similar. Once you've clicked on select similar, we want to click on select, and we want to grow the selection just a little bit. Alright, so you can see the image has selected nicely. And what we can do, we can click on copy. So we can click on Control C or Command C to copy the image. On the new layer, we can click on Control V to paste the image. So what we've done is just picked up all the black, we've copied the black, and now we've repasted onto a new layer. So we can just hide that layer, and we can see that it did a decent job. It's not as great, but what you can do, the lines are a little bit thinner, so you can either go back onto your new layer. You can repeat the process again, which is select similar. Actually, now I've selected the base one, so I'll Control D to deselect, select the back, go back in, select similar, quickly click on select grow, scroll on the image just a little bit, create a new layer, Control Command C, which is to cut or copy, onto a new layer, Control V to paste it. Yeah, that looks like it's actually done the job. So what I can do is just delete this layer because I don't need that. I'll rename this into line 2 because that's my new line 2. And if I just highlight that, you can see the difference between the two. So you can either keep it if you prefer to have thicker lines, or if you wanted to have thin lines, that's still fine. You can go on and carry on refining these lines so they can be a little bit more darker. So we go on to we go on to the image tab, go on to adjustment. This time we can click on brightness and contrast. We can zoom in just a little bit. I want to play around with the brightness, so we want to make it quite bright so the black sticks out, or we want to take out the brightness so the black sticks out. I want to increase the contrast a little bit so the blacks are actually blacks and the whites are whites. So yeah, that looks like it's produced a little bit. Yeah, that looks a little bit decent. So once you've done that, whatever image that you don't want still under your line layer, you can just click on E, which is your eraser. You can go to your eraser tool there. Make sure either you can, some of them, depending on what brush you prefer, I'll just use a nice hard brush. And all these other sections that I don't need, I can just erase that all out, just for this example. Alright. So now my image is much more cleaned. It doesn't even look like it was from any piece of paper. It doesn't have that feel, but it still has the character of it being sketched out. So that's a nice thing about using this technique. And it still keeps your charm and your character with your personal sketching style without compromising. Sometimes when you do use Photoshop, you always want to make things look perfect and real, and it does take away from your character a little bit. So what I'm doing is just erasing out all the lines that I don't need. I'm just cleaning up my work. Just make sure the lines are fine. Another thing that I'm also looking for is to make sure that these lines are connected. So I know in this corner here, if I just make my brush a little bit smaller, right here in this section, it probably wouldn't do any difference, but just for my sake, I just want to connect that. So I'll just click on the brush tool, change the color to black, and I'll just quickly connect that. So that will help us out later on when we are filling out our image, so it doesn't cause any gaps. So I'm looking at that as I clean. So I'm going to be jumping between E, which is erase, and B, which is the brush. And so that's the two shortcuts keys that I'll be using. Alright, so I'll quickly erase that. That is my hand. Okay, just quickly B just to connect that line up there. Okay, so if I zoom out, that's a good starting point. Once I've done that, I can just delete any layers. I'm starting to clean up my workspace here. So I have my base image because I always want to keep my base image until I'm really sure that I want to delete it. I have my background, I have my line, the last one that we want to create just on top of the background and below the line. I want to create a new layer and want to name it color. So now we can start adding some color. So we'll fill out the color. We can do this in two ways. We can either just paint it straight in, or we can go on to our line. Actually, no, we can duplicate this line layer. We can delete that, and we can change this line name to color because it just gives you an outline. Yeah. Alright, so you still have the outline, but we can always paint over it, so we'll just put that in the middle. So the order in which you put these layers are quite important. So what I'm going to do is just quickly fill out with color, whatever I prefer. So maybe I'll just quickly look for color. You can use your color wheel, which is a bit better if you want. G is your paint bucket tool, and I'll just quickly select on the sections that I want to fill. And now my workflow is just much more quicker, it's much more easier for me to create these concepts. Alright. So at this stage I'm just getting in just a rough block out of what I want. It doesn't have to be perfect still, because we're just building on at this point. I'm just filling in the colors. You might see some of the sections aren't filling out properly. Don't worry about that for now, because we'll always go back and sort that out later. Alright, so I'm happy with that just as a starting point. Obviously um, you guys will spend more time in fixing this up. So now the way that we'll start to refine this work is now we can go onto your brush tool, and now instead of using the fill, you can just brush in the color. So once you've brushed it in, be careful now. So now I'm filling it up a little bit more. You'll refine that to a level that you are more satisfied with. Then the last thing that we can do is either, if you don't like it, we can literally just get rid of the outline, but you can still keep the outline. But what you can do is just decrease the opacity a little bit. You can play around with those settings just to see how it would look with a less distinct opacity. You can go up to your layer type, where it says normal. You can play around with these different settings, so you can actually, so linear burn actually burns in the color quite nicely. So you can just explore with these settings to see what best suits you, what suits your style, but this is your starting point. Alright. Once you've completed this, you will start to add highlights of where light is coming from. So if light is coming from here, I'll start to add white highlights. and I'll create a new layer, make sure the layer is right at the top. I'll name that HL, which is my highlight, and I'll pick this color by clicking and holding Alt. This is my color picker, and just picks that color quickly. I'll just make that a little bit lighter because I want to emphasize that it is light. I'll come up to the top, change that to a feathered brush, so it's not a hard edge, so it does kind of taper off a little bit, and just decrease the opacity maybe to 50%. I can add some highlights to it, so it's almost as if the light is coming from this direction. Alright, that does it makes it over, like it does blur it out, so you can just click on E, which is the erase, and you can just start to tailor. You can tailor where your highlight would be. So if I just want it to be just at the top and the best there, I can make that look a little bit more decent. So even now, it's coming along a little bit more clearer than it was in the beginning. All right, so that's just my top has this nice highlighted edge to it, and I can probably do the same for the shorts. So I'll click on B, my brush tool, hold on Alt color picker, decrease that. I'm still remaining on the highlight section, and I'll just highlight just the front section there. Click on E to go back to my erase tool, and I'll just clean that up as I go. Obviously, the neater you are, you might want to just do this as a first. Make sure it's done in the first go. It just depends. But since you guys are learning, I do want you guys to just explore these different tools just to see how it looks. You might find that it's a style which actually suits you. So that looks like it's come along pretty decent so far. All right. I think with these tools, you might have enough tools for you to actually produce some good concept art. Just carry on with these principles, transfer the knowledge that you've gotten from these tutorials onto any design. So if it's environment, if it's just props, if it's assets, whatever it might be, these same principles would apply.